Good morning, good morning, good morning. How everybody doing? It's your boy Teflon from Paid to Cost Podcast. You know, it's a lot of things that is misunderstood in the eyes of people. And mainly it's all this talking. A lot of people do talking, but they never do understanding. So I want people to understand how you'll be lost. You know, It's a lot of informants out here to the point where we think that they're my friend. They ain't gonna tell on me. But that's so far from the truth. It's a lot of secret snitching going on out here. I'm gonna give you a deeper dive into what I'm speaking about. Because I got a little information that that's kind of like informative to people. You know what I'm saying? I'm a truth teller, and I'm gonna tell you the truth. You know what I'm talking about? So that's that. So as I speak about these informants and how informants operate in drug investigations, I'm gonna read from this, this snippet that I have right here. And it reads as follows. Okay, now here's a deeper dive and example of the policies and discussions surrounding how informants are used in drug investigations, especially in cities like Kalamazoo, Michigan, where the practices have been raising serious ethical issues. Now here we go. Real examples of informants in drug investigations. Okay. 1. Michigan versus Hughes, 2017, Kalamazoo, Michigan. Overview. The federal drug trafficking case heavily relied on confidential informants who were working off their own charges. Now, an informant's role. One CI made several controlled buys from Hughes, which was wearing a wire and being surveilled. Controversy. The CI had a criminal record, including drug and theft charges, but was used without adequate disclosure to the defense. Later testimony revealed inconsistencies in the CI's report, which raised credibility issues. Now, results. Hughes was convicted, but post-convictions filed challenged the velocity of the informant's testimony due to the lack of oversight. Now, they had this thing called Operation Faded Glory, and that was an indictment that happened in 2020. Now, here's the overview of that. A multi-agency takedown of local drug gangs targeting gangs like Woodbury Street Boys. Informers were used. The case was built on months of informant activity, including controlled purchases, hidden recordings, and information that led to wiretaps. Now, here's the risk to the informants. At least 2 informants went into protective relocation after suspects found out they were cooperating. Wow. Okay. Now, here's the policies. Now, here's the policies, discussion, and reform debates. Okay. Many issues have no formal law. Many states have no formal law regarding informant use. After serious scandals, informant dying during several purchases, written CI usages, tracking systems, and CI reliability. Payment controversy. CIs can be paid thousands of dollars per case, or be offered plea deals, reduced sentences, or immunity. Defense attorneys argue that the credibility in inconsistencies and lies, and they inconsistencies. And I'm gonna wait. an incentive to lie. Sorry. Okay. In such federal cases, payment receipts and informants have been sealed by the defense. So it's just um we got to really understand that it's out here, and people are they're turning a blind eye, to all this out here. They're turning a blind eye to it, and it's stagnating our community. It really is. So let's see. Wiretap surveillance method used. Let's see. Title III wiretaps. Live phone calls, text messages from suspect dealers and organizers. Multiple phone taps, including phone interrupted, and that's what we have now. We gotta really start paying attention to what a lot of people be saying. Because some people be thinking that people saying things and mentioning things because they don't like a person. Yeah, and that does happen. You know what I mean? But I was always taught this. I listen to everything someone tells me, but I don't believe everything someone tells me. And that has been the problem. People have been listening and believing everything everybody tell them, and then they're wrong. You know what I mean? Here at Paid to Cost Podcast, we jump on facts. You know what I mean? I'm gonna give you facts. I ain't gonna give you no misunderstanding. Because that's what the whole problem is. We all got misunderstandings of what's real, especially when it comes to this federal system. People fail to realize that everybody think that you gotta know who the informant is. No, you just gotta actually figure it out. You gotta actually understand that all criminals move the same way, and when you realize that a criminal is moving differently than you moving, he got he got a invested interest in another way. He got that in another way. So you got to stop believing this shit that people tell you just because they fucked with you the long way. They're not gonna tell you that they fought you, that they've been working with the police, or they may taking money from the police. To turn people in. They're not gonna tell you that. You know what I mean? Because that's a whole failed mission. I'm tired of looking at people that I took the oath on this street shit to honor it with dishonor it and think that I'm not supposed to speak about it. But to each his own. You know what I mean? I'm gonna stand 10 toes behind what I say. Because to play the game by the rules, you should be honored. And I'm gonna be honored. So whether people believe it or not, I'm just being, informative. Just spreading the information, trying to open your eyes a little bit. Because a lot of our eyes have really been closed to a lot of things that's really going on inside. And we fail to really speak about it. So you gotta understand. These people, are used by police to the point where it's raising concerns. To the point where they're violating their rights. And if you don't know, it'll be that mug right there next to you. That's an informant trying to work his own charges off. But that's your homeboy. He wearing a wire, he being surveilled and all that shit. But he's not gonna tell you that. I come from the days of where, when you catch a case, you talk to your mellow man, and like, man, them bitches caught me up last night, man. You know what I mean? So you already know how to move. But it's different nowadays. People don't, honor the fact that, what I mean, I don't want you to get caught the same way I got caught, so I tell you. Just gotta pay attention. It's a lot of control purchases going on, a lot of information that's leading to wiretaps and shit. These same people that everybody have been trusting for years, and they saying, they won't tell on me. They finally starting to tell, ain't they? So you gotta you gotta let people be who they gonna be, but understand what you need to speak about. Stand on what you need to stand on. Speak right. Speak honorable. Teflon down. Pay the Cost Podcast. Let's get it.